initially, you might find it difficult to remember these names, but you will have to revise it again and again. Then only you will be able to recall them. Okay. So syphilis, we have done it. So first of all, I will be talking about genital herpes. Okay. So genital herpes is basically caused by uh, a virus, which is herpes simplex virus, and it belongs to a group of herpes virus. So herpes virus are the DNA viruses that possess a unique property. And what are those unique properties? First is, these viruses basically they establish latent or persistent infection in the, okay. So number one, they are causing a latent infection, and number two, after a period of latency, sometimes they undergo periodic reactivation, leading to secondary disease. Okay. So one step is they have a property of latent infection. In latent infection, it is a kind of a persistent infection. You must be knowing that persistent infection are generally, we classify them in three types: latent infection, chronic infection, and slow virus infection, generally in case of viruses, right? So latent infection is the infection in which the virus will not replicate after establishing a primary infection in the host. Okay, once it has entered inside the host, it will proliferate, it will actively replicate and multiply, and it will establish the primary infection. After establishing the primary infection, it will go into latency, in which it will stop proliferating, replicating further, but it will persist inside the host. Okay. So in that period of latency, that particular virus will not be demonstrable. Okay. The disease will not be there, and also the virus will not be infectious. Okay. So basically virus जो है वो dormant stage में चला जाता है. So that is a latent persistent infection. Okay. So this is a unique property of herpes viruses. Okay. Herpes viridae family के it is a unique property. Now the second is, sometimes due to certain stimuli, these viruses they undergo reactivation again. So they further lead to secondary infections or recurrence, right? So these are the periodic reactivations which can occur due to certain stimuli, is one of the feature of the viruses belonging to herpes viridae family. So if we see the morphology of herpes virus, they are large, spherical in shape, and they have icosahedral symmetry. The diameter is around 150 to 200 nanometer in size. Nucleocapsid comprises of a capsid comprising of capsomere, and the genome is linear double-stranded DNA. Okay, so herpes viruses जो हैं, they are the example of DNA viruses, and it has a linear double-stranded DNA. Okay, but during replication, it replicates in nucleus. It is a DNA virus, so it will replicate in nucleus. So during replication, this linear double-stranded DNA changes into circular DNA. Okay, so this is again a unique property of these viruses. Now this virus, it consists of an envelope. It is an enveloped DNA virus. This envelope is surrounded by basically consisting of glycoprotein spikes. So this is a lipid envelope, and then there is a spikes. And in between the envelope and the nucleocapsid, there is another layer which is amorphous asymmetric structure known as tegument. So this is the morphology of herpes viruses. So if we see the classification of human herpes viruses, this is important table. It might be asked you in the exam. Sometimes short note is asked regarding the different viruses. So you should also know the official name of the virus as well as the common name of the virus. Okay. So we divide them subfamily. There are three subfamilies: alpha, beta, and gamma. Okay. Now, on the basis of duration of replication and their cytopathology, alpha has a very short duration of replication and they are cytolytic. Okay. Beta are having long duration of replication, more than 24 of hours, and they are basically of two type. One is cytomegalic, which basically leads to uh, increase in the size of cells, infected cells, and another one is lymphoproliferative, which will infect the lymphoid tissue. Okay. Third one is gamma subfamily. The duration of replication for the GABA subfamily is variable, but they are also lymphoproliferative. Okay, so they will affect the lymphoid tissue. So if we see, as I told you, these viruses, they are responsible for latent infection. So when they are going into dormancy, there must be some organ in which they will go and remain in the quiescent stage. So these alpha viruses belonging to alpha subfamily, the site for their latency is neurons. So they will go and remain dormant in neurons. Okay. For the beta subfamily, the cytomegalic one, they will basically remain dormant in glands and kidneys. Okay. And the lymphoproliferative one, they will the site of their latency is T cells, lymphoid tissue, mainly T cells. Then the gamma one, they also affect the lymphoid tissue, and the site of latency is also lymphoid tissue and mainly B cells. So gamma will be B cells and beta will be T cells. Okay. Then there are different genus among these subfamilies. So alpha subfamily, it has a simplex virus genus. Okay. And another genus is varicella virus. Okay. Now this simplex virus, it has two viruses, human herpes virus 1 and human herpes virus 2. So this is the official name. Okay. So human herpes virus 1 का जो common name है, that is HSV1, that is herpes simplex virus type 1. ठीक है. Human herpes virus 2, the common name is human herpes simplex virus type, sorry, this is 2. Okay. So HSV1 type 1 is human herpes virus 1. HSV2 is human herpes virus 2. Then varicella virus, it has a virus which basically causes chickenpox, that is varicella zoster virus, and the official name of VZV is human herpes virus 3. Then in beta subfamily, the cytomegalovirus genus, it consists of human herpes virus 5 and the common name is cytomegalovirus. Cytomegalovirus is another virus that belongs to this family, and it again has various clinical manifestation. It is one of the virus which is responsible for congenital infections. So human herpes virus 5 is there. Okay. Then roseola virus, it has two viruses, human herpes virus 6 and human herpes virus HHV7. So the common name is HHV6 and HHV7. Okay. Then gamma has lymphocryptovirus genus and it has an official name HHV4 or human herpes virus 4. Common name is Epstein-Barr virus. Okay. EB virus, it was covered in the system blood, and also it is one of the oncogenic viruses. So EBV is also a virus that belongs to human herpes viridae family. Okay. And it is human herpes virus 4. Then there is another virus which is Kaposi sarcoma associated herpes virus. Again, it was taught in oncogenic viruses as well as HIV में भी इसका mention होता है Kaposi sarcoma का. So the virus is Kaposi sarcoma associated herpes virus and the official name is HHV8. Okay. Sometimes the question when it is asked about, like, write a short note on EBV virus. So sometimes instead of EBV virus, there will be written human herpes virus 4. So therefore you should know which is the official name and which is the common name. Okay, so sometimes question might be asked like which is the HHV5, write a short note on human herpes virus 5. So you should know that the examiner is asking you about cytomegalovirus. Okay, so this is the classification of human herpes virus. So after the classification, now we will focus on human herpes virus 1 and human herpes virus 2. Okay, so these are the viruses which are the organism of interest today, because these are the organisms which are responsible for ulcerative sexually transmitted infections. Okay, so humans herpes simplex virus infections, they belong to alpha subfamily of herpes viridae. They are extremely widespread and they exhibit broad host range. Okay, however, जो human herpes virus है, it mainly infect exclusively man. It replicate fast, as I told you, 12 to 18-hour cycle. It spread fast and it is cytolytic. Spectrum of disease is broad. It can affect skin, it can affect mucosa, it can affect various organs. Okay, it undergoes latency in neurons and reactivate later, causing recurrent infections. So the site of latency is neurons, and then later on it will cause recurrent infection. So the herpes simplex virus (HSV) is of two types: HSV1 and HSV2. Now, if we see the various properties of both the viruses, the common mode of transmission, human herpes virus 1 is commonly transmitted by direct contact with mucosa or abraded skin. Okay, so with the direct contact with the mucosa or abraded skin or secretions containing viruses. So this is the common mode of transmission of HSV1. Whereas the common mode of HSV2 is the sexual mode or vertical mode. Okay, but somehow rarely herpes, in some cases, HSV1 can also be transmitted through sexual mode, through vertical mode. But the common mode for HSV1 is direct contact with mucosa or abraded skin or with the oral secretion. And herpes simplex virus 2, it is sexual mode or vertical mode. Now, as I told you, the latency is in neurons. So in case of HSV1, it basically go and become dormant in trigeminal ganglia. Okay, so trigeminal ganglia is the site of latency for HSV1, and sacral ganglia is the site of latency for HSV2. Okay, now age affected, HSV1 is mainly causing primary infection in young children. So young children are mainly affected in case of HSV1, and young adults are affected in case of HSV2. Okay. Now the common manifestation, if we see, HSV1 mainly causes orofacial mucosal lesions. Then CNS manifestations are there, like HSV1 is one of the one of the commonest cause of sporadic encephalitis. Then it can cause ocular lesions, and as a rule, it is said that HSV1, it causes skin lesion above the waist. But this rule is not absolute, but it is generally said that above the waist, skin lesions are commonly caused by HSV1, and below the waist, skin lesions are commonly caused by HSV2. Now coming to HSV2, it is mainly causing genital lesions. Then it is also causing congenital infections and neonatal herpes. Then CNS manifestations are also there, primarily in the form of meningitis. HSV1 was responsible mainly for encephalitis. HSV2 is mainly causing meningitis. Okay. Then skin lesions below the waist are mainly, it is generally said that it is mainly caused by HSV2, but it is not absolute. This rule is not absolute. Both the viruses can cause skin lesions anywhere elsewhere in the body. Okay. Now coming to the neurovirulence, the neurovirulence of HSV1 is less as compared to HSV2. The drug resistance is more in case of HSV2 as compared to HSV1. If we see the antigenic homology between these two types, around 80% antigenic similarities are there between the two types. Okay, and among the genome sequence, around 50% similarity or homology is there between HSV1 and HSV2. Okay. So if we see the epidemiology, herpes simplex virus is worldwide in distribution. There are no animal reservoir or vectors which are involved with human infections. And HSV1 and 2, they differ in their epidemiological pattern. So as I told you, HSV1 will cause primary infection early in life. Children are commonly affected. So since the disease is mainly acquired in childhood, so most of the adults, they develop antibodies. Uh, Around 70 to 90% of adults, they develop antibodies. Okay, and they fail to eliminate the virus from the body because it is causing latent persistent infection. And most adults, they remain carriers throughout the life. Okay. Now, if we see the epidemiological pattern of HSV2, the primary infection in case of HSV2, it occurs in adult. Okay, because primarily the mode of infection is sexual mode. So probably it is one of the reason that it occurs in adult life. Antibodies are developed in 20% of people, and HSV2 tend to reoccur more often than HSV1. So it has been seen that after latency, the recurrent cases are more common in cases with HSV2. So mode of transmission, if we see the pathogenesis, so first of all, there will be the primary infection, and disease will be acquired through different mode of transmission. So what are the different mode of transmission? It can be oropharyngeal contact with the infected saliva, as in case of HSV1. It can be direct skin contact. It can be with both HSV1 and HSV2. Sexual contact, more commonly with HSV2, but it can also occur with HSV1. Mother to fetus, congenital, transplacental, as well as during delivery. Okay, so it can occur. So mother to fetus transmission is also there, more common with HSV2 followed by HSV1. Okay. Now, site of infection, if we see, HSV replicates at the local site of infection, and then it will produce lesions. Okay. So again, HSV1 lesions are, as a rule, it is said it is confined above the waist. Most common site is around the mouth. And HSV2, it produces lesion below the waist. Most common site is genital area. But again, I'm repeating, this rule is not absolute. Then after primary infection in the local area, the virus will invade the local nerve and endings, and it will be transported by retrograde axonal flow to the dorsal root ganglia. There it will replicate further and it will undergo latency. Now, primary infection, if the host is immunocompetent, they are very mild. Sometimes they are asymptomatic also. But if the host is immunocompromised, then viremia can lead further spread to different organs, and disseminated herpes infection can occur, okay, in immunocompromised host. Now, coming to the latent infection, primary infection ke baad, now there is a latent infection which will occur in neurons. So HSV1 will cause latency in trigeminal ganglia. HSV2 will go and cause latent infection undergo latency in sacral ganglia. So there the virus will be in dormant phase. It will not replicate. Its proliferation will stop. So no disease will be there. No demonstrable virus will be there. And the person will not be infectious. But the virus is still there. Persistent infection is still there. Okay. So HSV, it does not replicate in latent stage. Now, what happened? Due to certain physical stimuli following fever, injury, physical or emotional stress, exposure to ultraviolet light, due to different reasons, and these viruses can also undergo reactivation. So when they get reactivated, they goes back to peripheral site. Okay, through nerves, again they will go to peripheral site, and they will further replicate in skin or mucosa, and then they will produce secondary lesion that we say as recurrent infection. Okay, so after latency, there will be recurrent infection. Now, recurrent infections are less extensive and less severe because by that time, host has developed antibodies. The immune system has developed antibodies that limits the local viral replication. So recurrent infections are generally less severe and less extensive as compared to primary infection. And many recurrences are asymptomatic, but sometimes the patient is asymptomatic, but the patient will be shedding viruses in the secretion. So the patient will be infectious. Okay. So in recurrent infection, patient will be asymptomatic, but the patient will be secreting virus. So this is a diagram which is showing about the pathogenesis of herpes viruses. Here you can see the virus is gaining entry through skin or mucous membrane. It is replicating locally. Then after primary initial infection, it is settling in nerves, trigeminal and sacral, depending upon the virus type. And after a period of dormancy, again the recurrence is occurring. Now the recurrence can occur in two forms. Once the virus is going again to the peripheral side, to the skin, and it is forming new blisters. So symptoms are there, but they are milder. Okay. So HSV is traveling back along the nerves to the skin to form new blisters. And second is that there is no symptom in the host. The virus has gone along with the nerves to the skin. It does not produce any symptom. The person is asymptomatic, but viral shedding will be there. Okay. So patient will be infectious if in the recurrence is there and the patient is asymptomatic. Still, the patient will be infectious. So what are the different clinical manifestation? Both HSV1 and 2 isolated from nearly all mucous cutaneous sites in viscera, as I told you. In general, orofacial lesions are common with HSV1, but they can also occur with HSV2. HSV2 causes commonly genital infections and intrauterine infection, but again, these genital infections can also occur with HSV1. Incubation period is around 1 to 26 days. Median is 6 to 8 days. Beside that, there are some other cutaneous lesions. It will be taught to you in detail in skin and soft tissue, like herpetic Whitlow, which occurs in healthcare workers. Then febrile blisters, which are basically vesicular lesions occurring following a case of fever. Then herpes gladiatorum, which occurs in wrestlers. Then herpes. So how do we diagnose them in the lab? So herpes, basically infection, we can perform microscopy in which we will perform a zinc smear preparation. So we will take a lesion from the ulcer and we will stain it with Ride or Giemsa stain or 0.5% toluidine glue. And in that, we can see the inclusion body, Cowdery type A inclusion bodies, also known as Lipschutz body of herpes virus, herpes simplex virus, with the formation of multinucleated giant cells. So these are the typical feature that can be sometimes seen on the slide, which is performed by zinc smear through microscopy. Then another method is, like any other viruses, these viruses can grow on conventional cell lines, more commonly like Hep2, HeLa cell line. And these conventional cell lines are used to demonstrate cytopathogenic effects, which are generally diffuse roundening and ballooning of these cell lines. So these are the typical cytopathogenic effects of HSV. Another is shell wile culture. Shell wile culture is generally performed to decrease the duration of growth of viruses on conventional cell line. So these are the shell wile cultures which are performed for various viruses, such as beside HSV, they can be performed for CMV, for HIV. So basically, they fasten the growth of viruses on these cell lines. Then there is a viral antigen detection in specimen by direct immunofluorescent test, in which we will use monoclonal antibodies tagged with fluorochrome or fluorescent dye, and we will see the fluorescence, detect the fluorescence by fluorescent microscope. Then HSV DNA detection by PCR and the real-time PCR, in which the target genes like glycoprotein B or the genes coding for UL30 protein can be detected. And then antibody detection by ELISA can be seen, or by other formats in which we detect the antibodies to glycoprotein G. So antibodies which are produced against these viruses will be IgM antibodies, and then they will reach the peak in 2 to 4 weeks, and then followed by appearance of first IgM and then followed by IgG antibodies. Okay, so this is how we will detect the case of genital herpes. So this is a picture showing a smear prepared by zinc preparation, and here you can see this multinucleated giant cell. Okay, so this is a smear which is prepared by tissue scraping, and this is a picture showing the indirect immunofluorescent test that has been performed for HSV1 and HSV2 antibody. So this is seen through fluorescent microscope. Now, what is the treatment of HSV infections? So, in general, antiviral drugs is given for HSV infection. The most common drug and the drug of choice is acyclovir. It acts by inhibiting viral DNA polymerase. So, acyclovir is commonly given and it is effective. For ocular infection, other drugs such as topical idoxuridine, trifluorothymidine, vidarabine, and cidofovir can be given. For HSV, encephalitis, and neonatal herpes, again, acyclovir is the treatment of choice. For genital herpes, again, acyclovir or some other drugs such as valcyclovir or famciclovir can be given. If there is a first episode of genital herpes, oral acyclovir is given for 7 to 14 days. Then IV acyclovir can be given if the disease is disseminated and has further progressed. For recurrent genital herpes, short course regimen are there for 1 to 3 days, in which again acyclovir is given. If there is a acyclovir resistance, then other drugs such as foscarnet, cidofovir, these antiviral drugs are given. Okay, but the drug of choice for HSV infection is acyclovir. Now coming to the another condition, next condition, which is a lymphogranuloma venereum, also known as LGV. So LGV is another generato-ulcerative STI, which is caused by Chlamydia trachomatis, serovar L1, L2, and L3. Okay, so chlamydia are basically obligate intracellular bacteria. Okay, they are obligate and they reside inside obligate intracellular bacteria. They cause spectrum of diseases such as trachoma. Okay, a trachoma is a infection of eye. Then there is a lymphogranuloma venereum, then conjunctivitis, pneumonia, and psittacosis. So there are different species of chlamydia, so which can cause another species of chlamydia can cause psittacosis. So these organisms, they cannot grow in artificial media. They grow in cell line, most commonly McCoy cell line, and abrinated eggs or animals. So they are not able to grow on artificial media. They are filterable. They pass through bacterial filter. So they are smaller in size and they can pass through bacterial filter just like viruses. They produce intracytoplasmic inclusion bodies. They possess both DNA and RNA. The cell wall is similar to gram-negative bacteria and they multiply by binary fission. And they are susceptible to wide range of antibacterial agents. So few features are similar to viruses and few features are similar to bacteria, but they are considered as bacteria. Okay, chlamydia. So based on genetic characteristic, chlamydia can be divided into chlamydia, genus chlamydia, and chlamydophila. So chlamydophila pneumoniae must have been covered in respiratory tract infection. Chlamydia has a species which is Chlamydia trachomatis. So this Chlamydia trachomatis is responsible for most of the human infections. Further, this Chlamydia trachomatis is divided into various serovar or serotypes. So here you can see that serovar A, B, B, and C are responsible for trachoma. Serovar D to K are responsible for genital chlamydiasis, inclusion conjunctivitis, and infant pneumonia. And serovar L1, L2, and L3 are responsible for lymphogranuloma venereum. Okay, so we are mainly interested in this condition, lymphogranuloma venereum, which is caused by serovar L1, L2, and L3. So if we see the clinical course of LGV, it passes through 3 stages. First stage is painless papule, ulcer or vesicle on penis or vulva. Then secondly, it will enlarge, it will become tender, and it is associated with soft inguinal lymph nodes. Then these buboes, that is enlarged lymph nodes, they will break down and they will form fistulae. Then there are systemic symptoms as well, such as fever, headache, and myalgia. Then the third stage, if the disease is untreated, it further lead to strictures formation. Then there is a condition known as ischemia, in which there is a edematous granulomatous hypertrophy of vulva, scrotum, or penis. and also there is a elephantiasis of the genital organs. Okay, so this is how it passes through 3 stages. So if we see the laboratory diagnosis and treatment of LGV, the most sensitive test is nucleic acid amplification test, in which we perform PCR. Then we can also detect antibodies against the organism by ELISA or microimmunofluorescence test, in which it is a kind of indirect immunofluorescence test, in which we are detecting uh, species specific antigen on a slide. Then there is a direct detection of inclusion bodies by Lugol's iodine. So this chlamydia organism, it consists of glycogen in its matrix. So they are basically stained by Lugol's iodine. So sometimes these inclusion bodies are also seen when we stain them. So these inclusion bodies are named as Miyagawa corpuscles for LGV. Okay, so there are different names for different species. So in case of LGV, these inclusion bodies are known as Miyagawa corpuscles. Now these inclusion bodies can also be seen with the help of direct immunofluorescence test. Now there was another test which used to demonstrate type 4 hypersensitivity known as free test. This is obsolete, it is not used now. Okay, so the main stay is nucleic acid amplification test, antibody detection, and detection of inclusion bodies if possible. Then treatment is basically antibiotic doxycycline, which is effective against chlamydias, and it is a drug of choice, and it is given for 21 days. Another drug that can be given beside, if the doxycycline cannot be given, then azithromycin is there, which is effective. Okay, so this is the picture showing MIF, anti-microimmunofluorescence test. Here you can see the minute immunofluorescence, which is seen through fluorescent microscope, and this is the negative reaction. Then this is the picture showing McCoy cell cultures, which are used for the growth of Chlamydia trachomatis, and here you can see inclusion bodies on the culture. So we can also demonstrate inclusion bodies on cell cultures directly. Now the next condition is donovanosis. Donovanosis is also known as granuloma inguinale. Okay, so you must remember that another name of donovanosis is granuloma inguinale. Now the causative organism is Klebsiella granulomatis. Older name was Calymatobacterium granulomatis, but now this organism has been classified in genus Klebsiella. It was first described in 1882 by MacLeod in Kolkata, and Charles Donovan, he demonstrated these Donovan bodies in genital lesions in 1905. So it is prevalent in India, Brazil, New Guinea, Papua, parts of South Africa, and parts of Australia. And risk factors are basically poor hygiene, lower socioeconomic status, and multiple sex partners. So if we see the clinical features, incubation period is around 1 to 4 weeks. Lesions start as painless papule. So it basically presents as beefy red ulcer. Okay, so here you can see it presents as a beefy red ulcer, bulky ulcer that can bleed easily. So sites are basically prepuce, frenum, glands in men, and labia minora in women. And it is one of the disease in which the lymphadenopathy is absent. There is a presence of pseudobuboes in inguinal region due to subcutaneous abscess. Okay. So laboratory diagnosis, first of all, specimen collection will be done. So we can take swab or a piece of a granulation tissue from the ulcer. We can perform rapid GIMSA or Wright stain, and we can see small Donovan bodies. So these Donovan bodies are large cyst-like macrophages which are filled with these capsulated bacilli. So these capsulated bacilli has a safety pin appearance when we stain them with GIMSA or Wright stain. They are generally non-motile, capsulated, and they are described as gram-negative, but somehow the gram stain, they are not visible by the gram stain when we perform them on regular staining. So we prefer GIMSA or Wright stain. Culture, they are not able to grow on artificial media, so we culture them on egg yolk medium or Hep2 cell lines. So they belong to genus Klebsiella, but they are not able to grow on artificial media. So Klebsiella granulomatous staining is by Giemsa or Wright stain, and culture is egg yolk medium or Hep2 cell lines. Okay. Molecular method can be performed to differentiate Klebsiella granulomatous from other Klebsiella species, such as we can target certain genes to differentiate it. Okay. Then treatment of donovanosis, we will use the antibiotic such as azithromycin. It is 1 gram orally given once per week or 500 milligram for at least 3 weeks until all lesions have completely healed. So alternatively, we can also give doxy or cotrimoxazole for 14 days. Now the last condition is chancroid, which is also known as soft chancre, and the causative agent for the chancroid is Haemophilus ducrei. So again, the Haemophilus, you know about Haemophilus, genus Haemophilus. One of the species of Haemophilus is ducrei, which is responsible for the chancroid. So it is a painful genital ulcer that bleeds easily. No inflammation of surrounding skin is there, and there is enlarged tender inguinal lymph node is there, leading to lymphadenopathy. So buboes are there. Okay. If we see the epidemiology, it is a common cause of genital ulcer in developing countries. Transmission is predominantly heterosexual, more common in females. It has been seen. Chancroid, and it increases both the efficiency, just like syphilis, of transmission and degree of susceptibility to HIV infection. Okay. So if we see the laboratory diagnosis, we will take the specimen or exudate or swab from the edge of ulcer, or we can also take lymph node aspirate. Then we will perform the direct microscopy. We can perform the gram stain. So how it will appear in the gram stain? It will appear as a pleomorphic gram-negative Coccobacillus, which occurs in groups or in pallar chains. So here in the picture, you can see that it is forming a chain-like structure. So these gram-negative Coccobacilli, they are arranged in chain. It is also known as school of fish or railroad track appearance. So when we perform a gram stain from an exudate from the ulcer, so if the patient has chancroid, then sometimes this school of fish or railroad track appearance is also seen. Okay, so these gram-negative Coccobacilli, they are arranged in pallar chains. If we see the culture, so like Haemophilus, it can grow on chocolate agar and it requires factor X, but it does not require factor V. So we can grow them on rabbit blood agar, chocolate blood agar, which are enriched with certain 1% isovitalics. And we can also make it selective by adding vancomycin, so that gram-positive organism will not grow. Then these organisms can also grow on chorioallantoic membrane of chick embryo. Okay. Now, the optimum condition for the growth of this organism, as for every Haemophilus, is it requires 10% carbon dioxide, high humidity, and incubation period is required for temperature is 35 degrees for 2 to 8 days. If we see the biochemical reaction, it is biochemically inert. So no particular positive biochemical reaction is there. So once the growth is there, we will perform slide agglutination test. Okay, so different anti-sera are available to confirm the diagnosis. Okay, so we can perform the slide agglutination test to confirm the diagnosis. Further, again, we can also do PCR, which is one of the sensitive method for the detection of the organism. So what is the treatment of chancroid? Again, it is a bacilli. So the drug of choice is an antibiotic, which is azithromycin, 1 gram orally, single dose. Okay. Other drugs can also be given, such as ceftriaxone, ciprofloxacin, or erythromycin. And treatment of all sexual partner is essential. Basically, whenever we are treating a patient of a sexually transmitted infection, then it is one of the essential requirement that we treat the partner also. Okay, so it is one of the 7 component of the laboratory diagnosis of STI that will be taught to you in another session, in which we will be discussing about the laboratory diagnosis of STI and the syndromic approach for the diagnosis and management of STI. So this syndromic approach is given by the national guidelines. These are the NACO guidelines. So there is a separate SGD there, but generally for every STI, the treatment of partner is also essential. Okay. So this is the summary of the lab diagnosis of genito-ulcerative STI. Here, if we see in the herpes, in microscopy, we can perform ZANC, we can do DFA, and electron microscopy is a added thing which is not done routinely. Then for syphilis, as I told you, we can perform dark field, we can perform DFA-TP. Chancroid, we can perform Gram stain to see railroad or fish stream appearance of Haemophilus. Then for LGV, microimmunofluorescent, immunofluorescent staining are there. For donovanosis, we can perform GIMSA or Wright stain. If we see the culture for herpes, we can say vero cell line, hepto cell line, or human diploid fibroblast cell line. For syphilis, for Treponema pallidum, no artificial media is available, but pathogenic strain can be maintained in susceptible animals. For example, Nicole strain in rabbit testis. Then chancroid, Haemophilus ducrei can grow on chocolate agar with certain supplements. And LGV, Chlamydia trachomatis, the cell line of choice is McCoy cell line. These are derived from human synovial fluid. And other cell lines like HeLa 229 can also be used. Then donovanosis, it is a Klebsiella granulomatis, but it does not grow in artificial media. Again, it requires cell lines such as hepto cell line. Then if we see the serology, in serology for herpes, antibody detection by ELISA, by complement fixation, or by immunofluorescent test is available. For syphilis, non-treponemal and treponemal tests are there. For chancroid, again, ELISA is available. LGV, complement fixation and microimmunofluorescence tests are available. Donovanosis, few are in the experimental stage. Then molecular PCR is available for all the infection, and PCR and nucleic acid amplification tests are also one of the sensitive tests for the detection of these organisms from the lesions. Okay, so this was all about genito-ulcerative STI. So now coming to the MCQs. So the first MCQ is granuloma inguinale is caused by Haemophilus ducrei, Klebsiella granulomatis, Treponema pallidum, or Chlamydia trachomatis. So what is the answer? Yes, it is Klebsiella granulomatis. Next is school of fish appearance is seen with Klebsiella granulomatis, Treponema pallidum, Chlamydia trachomatis, or Haemophilus ducrei. So what is the answer? Very good. It is answer D. So Haemophilus ducrei ke saath we will see the school of fish appearance. So Adiba, Ansh, Prakhar, Shashwat, everyone has correctly answered. Now next question is pseudobubos are seen in donovanosis, syphilis, herpes genitalis, or chancroid. So किस STI में lymphadenopathy, true lymphadenopathy absent होती है? Very good Ansh, Shubh, Shashwat, Adiba. Pseudobubos are seen in donovanosis. Now the next question is McCoy cell lines are used for the cultivation of HSV, Klebsiella granulomatis, Chlamydia trachomatis, or Treponema pallidum. Very good. It is basically for Chlamydia trachomatis. Prakhar Shashwat has answered correctly. Chlamydia trachomatis will be dealt in detail in subsequent lectures on vaginal and urethral discharge. So today I have just covered about the genital ulcer aspect. Okay, so this is all about genito-ulcerative disease. So please go and read, and please